everybody. It's Mrs. Pound, and we are studying Chapter 7.2 on Ecosystem Dynamics from Purposeful Design's Life Science. Today we're going to talk about Section 7.2.2 on Community Interactions. Our objectives will be to identify several community interactions among different species and compare the difference between predators and parasites. Sometimes there are neutral interactions. This is where the species do not directly affect one another at all. For example, the heron and the cattails in the background, or the plants that are growing back there, there's no really way that they affect one another. So not everything affects everything else. However, there are several examples of symbiosis. This is a relationship in which one organism lives on, near, or inside another organism, and at least one of the organisms benefits. The first type I want to talk about is commensalism. This is a relationship between two organisms in which one benefits and the other is not affected. And the example is trees. Trees provide nesting sites for birds, but birds do not help the trees at all. So the birds benefit, the trees really are not harmed or benefited, so it's commensalism. There's also mutualism. This is the relationship between two organisms that live and work together for the benefit of both. And an example is lichen that we have talked about before. The fungus provides water and protection, and the algae provides food. So that is mutualism because they are both benefiting. There are intraspecific competition within a species. Intra always means like internal, inside. So an example is deer competing for the same food, water, space, and mates. There is also interspecific competition. This is competition between two different species for food, water, space, and other needs. An example might be turtles and frogs compete for the same food. And there is a frog back there. There's no turtle, but you can imagine that there's a turtle there. Inter always means outside. Think international, between two nations. So between two different species, inter. There is also a predator-prey relationship. And this is where a predator is an organism that eats other organisms but does not live on or in its prey. And an organism that is eaten by a predator is the prey. So an example here is the spider eating a fly. Then there's a parasite-host relationship. And a parasite is an organism that eats other organisms and lives on, in, or near that organism. And the organism on which a parasite depends is its host. The difference here between a parasite and a predator is the parasite does not necessarily kill its host. A lot of times they keep the host alive and continue feeding off of them. And an example are lice or ticks living in fur of mammals. So our objectives today were to identify several community interactions among different species and compare the difference between predators and parasites. Don't forget your 5 questions and continue watching the video to answer the questions at the end.